Rara is a Los Angeles-based artist and poet working with video, sound, and performance, whose practice includes focus on human-technology relationships. Her work in progress is SYZYGY, an astronomical term used to describe objects yoked to the sun.
Thank you. Hi everyone. Let me adjust this to my scale. So I'd like to spend time talking about something very recent, very loose and unfinished, something I've just begun. And it's still in development. In September, I was invited by the Pasadena Arts Council to conduct an open-ended 3-month residency at Caltech as part of their Access initiative, bringing artists and scientists together to conduct research. As part of this effort, I've embedded with the Dickinson Lab for the past 2 months. The Dickinson Lab studies the neural and biomechanical basis of behavior in the fruit fly, Drosophila. And it strives to build an integrated model of behavior that incorporates an understanding of morphology, neurobiology, muscle physiology, physics, and ecology. So the lab is already this interdisciplinary space of scientists working across many different areas of biology. And the Dickinson Lab were generous and open enough to bring an artist into their team for the fall this year. So I feel very lucky to be among them. So I immediately felt at home in the Dickinson Lab because the experiments take place in thoughtfully constructed video and virtual reality environments in which the fruit fly is able to control changes in the image with their wing movement. So specifically, the scientists are looking at wing amplitude, which tells them, is it turning left, is it turning right, is it performing a saccade, which is kind of a backup movement, and then the video responds to that movement. These small circular flight arenas are outfitted with LED panels, infrared and high-speed cameras, and sensors that map the image to the movement of the fly. Scientists in the lab have described the experiments in these arenas as flies going to the gym, or flies playing video games, and also flies starring in a kind of James Bond feature-length film, because they fly for a long time. So it is a bit of a feature. And the research focuses on flight behavior, navigation, and how animals transform sensory information into code that controls motor output and behavior. The idea of creating videos for an animal audience, it fascinated me as a video artist who's been making videos for humans and ignoring so many audiences, so many potential audiences. But flies like us depend largely, but not entirely, on vision to navigate the world. And the videos that the lab has created for flies contain high contrast stripes, star field patterns, and bright disks that model the sun. Most sequences begin with bright stripes sliding across dark backgrounds, because one of the most reliable fruit fly behaviors is stripe fixation. While flying in closed-loop rotational conditions, a tethered fruit fly will vigorously orient toward a vertical stripe. Where there's a stripe, they will almost certainly follow it, fixing on it, a reflex that is so strong, it is somewhat difficult to explain how flies ever make it anywhere. In other words, they're such good stripe fixers. How do they move around the world, given that there are vertical lines virtually everywhere? One remarkable quality of the flight arena and a scenario in which flies are the intended audience of video, is that representation vanishes. For the fruit fly, these videos are not a simulation of reality or a virtual space, but rather reality includes video. Without brackets or quotations, video is reality. Images are as real as physical objects in space. In this context, there's no distinguishing between image and object, video and natural environment. This kind of logic appeals to me, both as an artist and as someone who shares 75% of my DNA with the fruit fly. Fruit flies automatically acknowledge something about reality that actually took me a very long time to understand. And that is that there's both an illusory quality to reality and also a truthful quality to images that we are hardwired to respond to. A question that lingers for me is, how can a complex organism simultaneously be a system, a network, a circuit, a model? Drosophila melanogaster has been extensively studied for over a century as a model organism for genetic and neurological investigations. It is undeniably an excellent subject in the sense that a fruit fly has a very short life cycle. It's easy to breed and maintain, and it has a low number of chromosomes, a small genome size, and a complex brain that is equipped with a very small number of neurons. It has around 100,000 neurons, and a human being has around 100 billion. What I learned from the lab is not to assume based on these numbers a kind of human superiority. Just because I have more neurons doesn't mean I'm necessarily doing more with each of those neurons. In the realm of vision, I learned that we're operating very slowly compared to a fruit fly. As a video artist, I'm humbled by the fruit fly's visual system. So much of our human culture co-evolves with moving image, with film and television. Our identities are reinforced and influenced by stories that unfold at 24 frames per second. Whereas a fruit fly's visual system can perceive movement 10 times faster than the human eye, human brain connection. If I were to take a fly to the movies, it would see a slideshow of still images. It wouldn't see a silky, continuous image. In order for that to happen, the movie would need to be 300 frames per second. So you can imagine just the speed at which they see motion. I was foolish to assume that Drosophila were simple based on their size, based on a number of neurons. They possess one of the fastest visual systems on Earth. It's not doing less than larger organisms, it's doing a lot more with less. Over time, I've learned not to treat the fruit fly as a model of a human system and not to look for answers about being a human being while studying the fruit fly. I've learned that the fly is actually a really excellent model for a fly and for understanding flies, which was a big revelation for me. In one experiment, a fly flashed with red light senses the light as if it were tasting sugar. This is something that the scientists have been doing for quite a while called optogenetics, where they'll breed a line of flies that respond to light in specific ways. So when it sees a specific color, it tastes sugar. And so this initiates an elaborate dance. Once the fly has tasted sugar, flies exhibit a dancing behavior when they find food. So if you were to look at the overview of this dance on the 2D plane, it looks like petals of a flower radiating out from a center. Crossing light and taste, the color red is suddenly as sweet as sugar. A synesthetic, hallucinatory sensation I can actually kind of imagine, and I've come to appreciate through the fly. It's a sensation that feels like it belongs to speculative fiction, a thought experiment that can actually be realized, a world in which color tastes sweet. This kind of rewiring and reformatting of the fruit fly, moving the signal like unplugging a cord from one input and putting it into another input. This feels a lot like basic electronics to me. And in a way, it makes the fly resemble a machine rather than a living thing. And yet there is the dancing, performing an ancient and inexplicable behavior that feels both impossible and frankly unnecessary to decode. The dance asserts a constellation of meanings, associations, and ethological connections that riff on the history of the earth. I see the dance in response to sugar as a kind of something that has accrued over time. It's grown over time to take this specific form. So flies have occupied this planet and developed this dance over 250 million years. The dance operates on a poetic level, offering a window into another form of being. Studying complex behavior such as the sugar dance, courtship rituals, displays of aggression, these point to experiences that elude simple explanation. They resist being reduced to circuitry. And in a way, what I observe when I see this dance is something connected to the aesthetics of survival. So the aesthetics of survival interest me, the different behaviors that organisms have developed to manage social and environmental threat. It appears to me that paying attention to the aesthetics of survival is an area where science and art can overlap dramatically, with an interest in balancing simplicity and complexity, and an interest in acknowledging unanswered questions. Thank you.